Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the No DQ live recap of AEW Dynamite as well as WWE NXT for February 12th, 2020. Thank you to everyone watching, whether it's live or on demand. I appreciate your viewership and support. Shout out to the chat room. Let's go ahead and get started with this recap. We had over on AEW Dynamite an eye for an eye recap, as well as what happened with Britt Baker and her dental work. We also had some clips of Pac and Kenny Omega, the setup for their match at the upcoming AEW Revolution pay-per-view. We had the pyro, and then we kicked it right off with the tag team title match. SCU, the former champions, going up against the new champions, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. I like the fact that AEW gets right to the point, but at the same time, I like the entrances. And I like seeing Kenny Omega come out for his entrance. I like the SCU entrance. So I kind of get bummed out when we don't get the entrances. But the positive of it, easy for me to say, is that you get more people on the show and you move things at a faster pace. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, who do you like more, Millhouse or Ralph Wiggum? Well, that's a non-wrestling question and off topic on top of that, so I will address that at the end of the video, but thank you very much for the super chat. I do appreciate it. So, during the match, Adam Page, for a brief time, was unable to get on the apron in order to tag himself into the match. He eventually got in. Crowd was really into this, chanting, "This is awesome." And Adam Page and Kenny Omega got it together to retain the tag team titles. They did the V-trigger buckshot lariat combo to pin Kazarian. And interestingly enough, as soon as the referee hit 3, Kazarian got his hand on the rope. However, it was too little too late. I did like that, though. It was a nice touch to show that Omega and Page just barely got by beating the former tag team champions. And if it was just a split second faster, the match would have kept going. So good stuff here to kick off the show. Afterwards, they drank beer. Now, before the match, we had a promo from the Dark Order, and they said that they are preparing for the Exalted One, and they are just getting ready to strike. After the match was over, we had the Dark Order come out, and there was a huge brawl. The heels came out. The heel tag teams, Butcher and Blade, came out. And then the babyface tag teams came out, including the Young Bucks. And interesting line from Jim Ross talking about how the Young Bucks are the Bucks of Youth. He actually referred to them as the Bucks of Youth, which is what Matt Hardy would always call the Young Bucks during their storyline and matches against each other. Is that a tip that Matt Hardy is AEW bound? We did have the Dark Order teasing the Exalted One's impending arrival. We shall see. And then over on NXT, we kicked off the show with a recap from last week. Both shows, AEW and NXT, kicking off with recaps and showing various segments from the previous week's show. For NXT, they showed the footage of Charlotte. They showed the stuff with Undisputed Era and Tommaso Ciampa. We kicked off NXT with Roderick Strong of the Undisputed Era. He was very upset about Velveteen Dream coming back last week and having a picture of his wife and his daughter on his tights. Then, instead of Dream coming out, we had Bronson Reed come down and talk about how he has a problem with Roderick Strong. This led to a match, And during the match, Velveteen Dream's lighting was up on the stage, but despite the distraction, Roderick Strong was still able to pick up the victory with the knee strike. And then we had Velveteen Dream cut a promo backstage. He was wearing his Hollywood Hogan style jacket, and he said that he can no longer take the title from Roderick Strong because Strong lost it to Keith Lee. So now he is going to take Roddy's wife and daughter. And then the camera cut to a shot of the tights once again, and Roderick Strong was just completely irate over this. Nice angle here. I like it. Velveteen Dream playing mind games, trying to get some revenge on Roderick Strong for putting him out of action back in September. Psycho Jet Black with the $2 super chat says, who should Velveteen Dream face at WrestleMania TakeOver? Interesting question. He is currently scheduled to face Roderick Strong on next week's show. Maybe that feud will continue until WrestleMania. I could see him possibly being in a North American title match. Like, I would not be shocked if they do some sort of multi-man match, maybe a fatal four-way. They could do something like Roderick Strong, Velveteen Dream, Keith Lee, and Dominik Dijakovic. They could do a four-way at WrestleMania. There's a lot of possibilities. But what would you guys like to see? Let me know in the chat room. Power Packers 90 with a $2 super chat brings up a good point here that I didn't mention. He says, remember Christopher Daniels was going to be the higher power. Yeah, that is true. For those of you that don't remember, there was actually a pitch back during the Attitude Era for Christopher Daniels to be the higher power leading the corporate ministry. Of course, it ended up being Vince, and probably for the best because Daniels was an unknown at the time. So it's not like it would have been a big shocker. People would have been like, who's this guy? And they ended up going with Vince instead. But it could have been a way to set up Daniels back in the day if WWE had gone through with it. Imagine if it was Daniels. What would have happened with WWE if it was him in that spot and not Vince? Like, would Daniels have been a big star or would he have fizzled out? I mean, that was a pretty big spot that WWE was hyping up back in the day. But anyways, enough of that. Let's move on here to the next segment. So one more thing about NXT before I go back to AEW. We had a vignette with Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne, the Broserweights. They got pulled over and the car ended up being towed. Neither of them had a license. They were stuck there on the side of the road with their trophy. They had to figure out how to get to Portland. And throughout the show, we had different clips of them en route to Portland. They were on a duck swan boat, and a swan boat, I should say. And they were traveling across this river. And then in another segment, they were taking the trophy. They were at an airport, and they loaded the trophy on the airport plane, the plane at the airport. And then they got into the plane in the stowaway compartment. And then they were like, whose plane is this anyways? And that's when we saw Triple H show up. And they basically hid in the luggage compartment of Triple H's private plane to go to NXT TakeOver Portland. These were pretty funny segments. I did enjoy them. Nice way to utilize these guys leading up to the upcoming pay-per-view. So back over on AEW, we had Jim Ross interview Santana before the show. And Santana cut this promo, talked about being broke, and he lived in this bullshit-based apartment in the Bronx. His father went blind when he was 14, so he was taking this situation with his eye, Jon Moxley taking out his eye last week, very personally. And he said that Moxley pissed everything away by refusing to join the Inner Circle. And all Moxley did, according to Santana, was build his own coffin. Dylan Hensley with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dylan. He says, "Hey, Aaron, I'm having a good time at the AEW show live. Awesome turnout. These guys really bring it here in Texas." I'm glad you're enjoying the show, Dylan. And from what I could tell, it looked like a pretty full crowd this week. AEW has been struggling with ticket sales for some of these recent Dynamites, but it looks like this week they drew a very respectable crowd. Looked almost full from what I could tell. So good for AEW. And they got some upcoming shows. They're returning to Boston and Philadelphia. So they should be getting some pretty big crowds coming up in the next couple of months. And it was a very hot crowd too, as Curtis Butler points out. We also had a Darby Allin video. He had a bunch of signs that he was showing to the camera. And the final sign, well, the next to final sign, was a challenge to Sami Guevara for the upcoming Revolution pay-per-view. If this was WWE, this would probably be the kickoff match, but should be a really interesting match between these guys, two guys that are young and hungry, trying to make it to the next level. So that appears to be set for the Revolution pay-per-view. And the final drawing or final sign was a drawing of Sami Guevara and something about herpes. Over on NXT, we had Angel Garza cut a promo talking about wanting to win back the Cruiserweight title. He was confronted by Lio Rush, and that set up a match for later on the show. We had Candice LeRae versus Dakota Kai. At some point during this match, Candice's nose was bleeding. Dakota Kai did, in fact, pick up the victory, as I expected she would, leading into the pay-per-view. She's got a pay-per-view match against Tegan Nox. After the match was over, Dakota Kai attacked Candice with the ring bell until Tegan Nox came out, made the save, and there was this big brawl to set up their upcoming match at the TakeOver pay-per-view. Back on AEW, we had Dustin Rhodes versus Sami Guevara. Big pop for Dustin Rhodes, who was billed from Austin, Texas, and he got the hometown reaction. Jake Hager was out there with Sami. Crowd was doing the "You Still Got It" chant at Dustin. Hager was interfering during the match. He climbed up the steel steps to try and distract Dustin. Dustin managed to stay in the game. He hit his Canadian Destroyer, which everybody loves, and then hit the final Reckoning to score the victory over a very game Sami Guevara. Now, when I was watching this, I'm like, man, they're not doing a very good job of building up Sami here for the Darby Allin match, but I think the emphasis here was setting up Dustin versus Jake Hager. After the match was over, Dustin got on the mic. He called Hager Jericho's bitch, and he said that, are you going to step in the ring, or are you going to just keep collecting a paycheck? And then Dustin said he wants a piece of Jake Hager's ass at Revolution. Hager walked to the back, but later on during the show, it was officially confirmed Jake Hager will finally be competing in an AEW ring at Revolution against Dustin Rhodes. So there you go. We had Tony Schiavone interviewing Britt Baker, and they did the interview on the stage. She gave him a hug, and then she said all she was doing last week was improving the health of the product. And she said that the tooth had extensive decay, and that tooth just needed to come out. She talked about the title match between Riho and Nyla Rose and said that it doesn't really matter who wins the match because she is still number one and everyone else is number two. Crowd was booing Baker, and she responded by saying that it seems like the fans are a bit confused. There's a bit of confusion from these chubby Whataburger faces. Crowd went absolutely crazy for this. This was almost like insulting the Seattle Supersonics when Elias did that promo. The crowd was booing her like crazy for this. And she talked about how she's a role model and all this stuff. And I thought this was great. I like the fact that they did a different thing with the cheap heat. Instead of knocking the sports team, they knocked Whataburger, which I guess is like In-N-Out for Texas. In-N-Out, of course, is legendary in California, but Whataburger is a big thing in Texas. So to insult Whataburger, that's pretty low. I mean, that is about as cheap of heat as you can get without referencing the sports teams. Let's see here. We have a $5 super chat from Psycho Jet Black, who once again, kind of goes off topic here, but also mentions Jake Hager. Says, why was Jake Hager such a jobber in WWE? Also, who is more over, Apollo Crews or EC3? Well, as far as Jake Hager goes, he had his run, but the problem is, long story short here, without going too far off topic, he won the world title, and then WWE did not treat him like a world champion. He was booked like a mid-carder that was holding the world title, and after that, it was hard for people to take him seriously. And WWE just never really invested in him. You know, they did a half-assed investment of him by putting the world title on him after he won Money in the Bank, but then not booking him strongly. So that's pretty much why he didn't pan out as a top level guy. Almost like a Jinder Mahal style push. I mean, the thing is, Swagger did get pushed a bit more than Jinder was, but they just didn't go all the way with him once he won the title. And as far as who's more over, Apollo Crews or EC3, well, at least Apollo Crews is getting TV time, so I guess Apollo Crews by default. Over on NXT, we had Johnny Gargano picking up a victory over a very game Cameron Grimes with the Gargano escape. Grimes did actually escape the Gargano escape at one point and was fighting like hell, but in the end, Gargano was victorious. Crowd was very much into the match, chanting NXT and all that stuff. We had a recap on AEW of Nyla Rose's recent rampage, attacking people, putting them through tables and such. We had the match for the Women's Championship that Britt Baker had talked about earlier. Nyla Rose brought out a table at one point, and Riho ran across the table and used it as a ramp, and she delivered a drop kick to Nyla Rose. I thought that was a pretty cool moment. I actually thought the match was really good for these women, better than their first match, and the announcers were bringing up how Nyla has gained more confidence and she's improved. This was a pretty solid match. Back and forth here, very competitive. Nyla did a top rope flying knee as Riho was hanging onto the ropes. She did a top rope DVD, which Riho kicked out of. Riho kept coming back, got a near fall with a Northern Lights suplex. Crowd was chanting, "This is awesome." Riho did the double foot stomp, which Nyla pretty much kicked out of at one. Riho hit another one, but then Nyla got her foot on the rope, and then Riho got hit with a spear by Nyla Rose, and then Nyla hit the Beast Bomb for the 1-2-3 and is the new AEW Women's Champion, probably for the best. I'm sure Riho is a sweet person, but she just wasn't working out as the world champion, just not believable. When you see her, you don't see the best women's wrestler in the world. Nyla Rose at least has that size and power, but of course you're going to have people making all the comments about her being transgender, whatever. She, regardless of what you think about her as a person, she looks the part of somebody who can win a fight. So for me, she's one of the best choices AEW has as far as being the champion goes. And hopefully they can bring in some more people and they can continue building her as a monster. You have her there. You might as well book her as a monster, and that's what they're doing here. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully they bring in some people. Britt Baker's doing her thing, but she's also a heel. So you need some babyface characters to get in there and mix it up with Nyla Rose. Tony H with a $2 super chat says, Britt versus Rose at Revolution? If so, heel versus heel? Yeah, I don't think so. That's the thing. Now that Nyla's the champion, what do you do with Britt? I'm guessing Britt's just going to keep doing her promos and her own thing, which I think is fine. I could see them possibly doing one more Riho versus Nyla match, do a rubber match at the pay-per-view. I mean, you could do that, have Nyla win, and then move on to someone else. Let's see, where are we at now? All right. So we had Angel Garza versus Lio Rush in a number one contenders match for the Cruiserweight title. Angel went for the wing clipper, but then we had Lio counter that with a small package and picked up the victory. After the match, the champ, Jordan Devlin, came out and said that Lio is next to go on the Jordan Devlin Cruiserweight Tour and that you don't bet against an ace. That match will be taking place next week. The Holiday Christopher Mace with the $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Chris. He says, should they bring in Thunder Rosa to face Nyla Rose? Absolutely. I don't know what Thunder Rosa's status is with NWA or how long she's committed to them, but AEW should definitely try to pick her up. I would definitely try to get her in, and any other top free agents that they can bring in and develop, because a lot of people would argue that AEW's weakest point is their women's division. So they got to bring in some credible superstars and get that division rolling. All right, back to AEW. We had Chris Jericho do a backstage promo, talked about how Moxley is a piece of trash. He did not call him a piece of shit this week. Jericho said that he has found a bounty hunter to take care of Moxley next week if Moxley gets through Santana. And then he revealed that this bounty hunter is Ring of Honor star Jeff Cobb, who I am actually not familiar with at all, but we'll talk about him here in a few minutes. There was a brief video package of him. So Jeff Cobb from Ring of Honor, going to be part of AEW now, doing a match with Moxley on next week's show in Atlanta, Georgia, which will also be hosting the first ever cage match in AEW history. Ken terminated by Google with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Ken. He says, does Garza's smile give you the Guerrero vibes? It's ironic because Eddie never smiles as a heel. By the way, love Mauro Ranallo, but I cringe at his hip-hop references. You know what? Mauro Ranallo sometimes says stuff that's a bit silly, but that's part of his charm, in my opinion. And yeah, I like Garza's whole swagger and routine. It does have an Eddie Guerrero vibe for sure. And even when he came out on Raw and talked about how all the ladies adore him and all that, you know, he's kind of got like a modern day Latino Heat style gimmick. So yeah, I definitely see some Eddie Guerrero in Garza, and both as far as his personality and his in-ring performances. You know, a lot of people making comparisons to him and Eddie. Definitely a lot of potential with him. And Tony H with the $2 super chat says, Jeff Cobb will be a legit star by 2021 in AEW. Well, there you have it. I got to check out some of his work. Tony H with a bold prediction here thinks Jeff Cobb's going to be a legit star in 2021. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree? For those of you that are familiar with Jeff Cobb, do you think that he'll be a standout in AEW? Thank you for that super chat, Tony H. Let's see, where are we at now? All right, we still got some more AEW to talk about before I get back to NXT. JSpin401 says Cobb blows, so apparently he's not a big fan. Christopher May says that Jeff Cobb can be a standout. So difference of opinions there. We had Brandy Rhodes come out, and she was on commentary for the next match. Brandy Rhodes no longer part of the Nightmare Collective. That storyline has seemingly been dropped, and it should be, as it should be. We had Brandy on commentary for MJF versus Jungle Boy Jack Perry. MJF came out and Wardlow was sent to the back with the Battle Bowl ring or the Battle Royal ring, whatever they're calling it. During the match, JB, Jungle Boy, he spit in his hand and then shook MJF's hand when MJF stuck his hand out. Pretty back and forth match here. Jungle Boy actually got in quite a bit of offense on MJF. And then MJF regained control and took a little shot at Brandy. He yelled over at her and said, "Hey, Brandy, you can have a real man." And then he proceeded to grab his junk. We had Wardlow come back out to ringside, and he handed the ring over to MJF, who punched Jungle Boy with the ring and then hit the double cross for the pinfall victory. Really solid match here. I enjoyed it. Good chemistry between these guys. Good to see MJF having a solid match on Dynamite. We all know the guy can talk, and now people are seeing that the guy can compete in the ring as well. After the match, Wardlow attacked Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus came out to make the save. Over on NXT, we had a video package to hype up Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic. They showed footage of Keith Lee in the Royal Rumble. Mark Henry was talking about the match. Pretty good stuff here to set up their North American Championship match at TakeOver. We then had Bianca Bel-Air versus Santana Garrett. Pretty quick match here. Bianca picked up the victory, and then she cut a promo talking about how she is not invisible and she will walk out of NXT Portland as the new women's champion. This led to Rhea Ripley coming out. Rhea said she's not overlooking Bianca Belair. She's looking right at her, and she's going to go right through her. A fight broke out, but Bianca Belair managed to get the best of Rhea Ripley and laid her out. Historically, when something like this happens, the person who's the last one standing before the pay-per-view tends to lose. Now, I think that's happening regardless. I think it's a pretty safe bet that Rhea Ripley is going to retain, but you guys will have to stay tuned for the predictions. Tomorrow night, cheap plug, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 Pacific, there will be the live NoDQ.com predictions for NXT TakeOver Portland. Myself and the NoDQ panel will be giving our predictions for the show. The NoDQ review will be back shortly next Tuesday night, special Tuesday night edition of the NoDQ review. That will be Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. But tomorrow night, Thursday night, NXT TakeOver predictions. So that's coming up on the schedule. A lot going on here because we'll also have the live review of NXT Portland on Sunday night. We had over on AEW a promo, a video package from Pac. He was training in the gym, preparing for Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, according to Pac, knows that Pac is the goddamn best in AEW. Pac talked about their upcoming 30-minute Iron Man match in 2 weeks and said that Omega is a lucky bastard to have an opportunity to be in the ring with the best. Then we had, over on NXT, a promo from Tommaso Ciampa. He was watching the footage of when he had to relinquish the NXT Championship, give it to Triple H. He talked about how he was scared he would not be able to return, but he's back, and he said that if Adam Cole wins at TakeOver, he will become the longest reigning NXT champion in history. But then he says, what if there's a guy who wants it just a little bit more? And Ciampa finished off his promo by saying that a man is most dangerous when he has nothing left to lose. Great promo here by Ciampa. Really well done to set up their match for Sunday. And again, I'll be talking about the predictions tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you guys stay tuned and please spread the word. If you enjoyed this video, tell a friend, click on that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell for updates, and just tell a friend, word of mouth, whatever you can do to spread the word about the channel would be very much appreciated. So we had our main events. For AEW, we had Chris Jericho coming out in his little luxury suite to watch Jon Moxley versus Santana in an eye for an eye match. Both guys were wearing eye patches. The fight began in the crowd. Excuse me, losing my voice here as I tend to do after 30 minutes. Get a good sip of water there. Fight was in the crowd. They got into the ring. Santana was out there, and Ortiz was out there as well. Both of them trying to take out Moxley, trying to jam his eye into the steel steps. And then Ortiz spit some of the bubbly into Moxley's good eye. However, Moxley was able to come back from that. He went after Santana's eye and then hit the paradigm shift to pick up the victory. He was immediately attacked after the match by Ortiz. Jericho got into the ring, started whipping Moxley with the AEW Championship belt. Jake Hager did the low blow. Jericho hit the Judas effect. They did a symbolic pinfall. And then to top it all off, a little bit extra punishment, Jeff Cobb came out at the very end and hit his spinning power slam maneuver onto Jon Moxley. My first impression of Jeff Cobb as somebody who's not familiar with him reminds me very much physically of Rhino. Very similar build and look. But I haven't really seen anything of him in the ring other than what he did at the end of Dynamite. But looks like a pretty powerful guy, so we'll see what happens next week. Moxley versus Jeff Cobb. Interesting that they're doing this match because you would think that Moxley would be picking up momentum heading into the pay-per-view, but maybe Moxley's going to take a loss before the pay-per-view. I mean, I would not see a problem with that because Moxley's been beat up so much, and you could kind of say, well, maybe Moxley just has been overwhelmed by the Inner Circle so much, and that leads to him losing to Jeff Cobb. Like, that would be huge if Jeff Cobb beat Jon Moxley next week. What do you guys think? How should they book this match? Let me know in the comments, and I'll read off some of your responses. And D-Dubs124 says, Jeff Cobb was in Lucha Underground for 2 years. I only watched the first year of it, so if they did something beyond that first season, I definitely missed it. Mr. Anderson says Moxley should win. Tony H says, I wouldn't like that idea before the title match. Tic Tat Tat says interfere. Holiday Christopher Mace with a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Chris. He says, Moxley beat Cobb at Wrestle Kingdom this year for the U.S. title. Well, there you go. So the two of them have some history. So we had the NXT main event. Adam Cole versus Kushida. Adam Cole was victorious, but Kushida put up a pretty good fight. After the match, Tommaso Ciampa came down. The two of them had a face-off. Cole held up the title. We had Ciampa saying that he's going to take his life back on Sunday, and Cole responded by saying, "Over my dead body you do." And that was the final closing moment of NXT heading into the NXT TakeOver Portland pay-per-view. All right, so let's go ahead and do the letter grades for the shows. You guys can give me your letter grades for both shows if you want. I'm only going with AEW because that was the show I was primarily watching. I had both of them on throughout the entire evening, though. AEW was really solid. I'm giving AEW an A-, which I believe I gave it last week. Very good show overall. Very entertaining from start to finish. Good build-up for the Revolution pay-per-view. Shady Snake gives AEW an A+. Super Namick with an A+. Curtis Butler with a strong A. You guys really liked AEW this week. Marvin with an A+ for AEW. Smithsta with an A for AEW. Wow, you guys really enjoyed AEW. That is putting it mildly. J Spin 401 gives both shows a B. Tic Tat Tat gives an AEW, gives an A- to AEW and a B+ for NXT. Keith Johnson with a B+, and Christopher Mace gives AEW an A+. So for those of you that are giving A+ to AEW, do you think that this was the best AEW Dynamite to date? I don't think it was necessarily the best one, but I definitely feel it was one of the better ones for sure. But I wouldn't say that was my all-time favorite AEW. And we have a $50 super chat from Chris Cahill. Thank you so much, Chris. I really do appreciate it. He says, "Appreciate what you do, Aaron. My question is, with Lucha Wrestling being pushed by WWE lately, who would you say played a major part making it what it is today, and who made the biggest impact, greatest Latino wrestler of all time between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio?" Well, that's a great question. Before I get to that, Smith says he thought it was the best AEW episode. And screw it. Chris Cahill, I don't have it, but tonight you were the honorary No DQ Super Chat champion. Christopher Mace says it was one of the best AEW episodes to date. All right, so regarding Lucha Wrestling and WWE, I would definitely say Rey Mysterio, because that's when WWE really started to push the Latino superstars strongly. And I think a lot of it too was trying to increase the Hispanic demographic, which WWE was doing in the early 2000s. And I think Rey and Eddie were big parts of that for sure. WWE did, have the lightweight division and push some of those guys, but it really wasn't until Rey came in. I mean, even when Eddie came in, Eddie was a pretty big star with China doing Latino Heat, but I think it was Rey that really took it to the next level. So I would say the guy that probably should get the biggest credit would be Rey, followed by Eddie in a close second. And just Eddie's longevity. But both of them, really helped bring in the Hispanic audience to WWE programming. I mean, they were very important players during that time period in the early 2000s. Ken terminated by Google with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Ken. So this is another off-topic, but I'll do a couple of off-topic questions here. Ken says, and thank you again for the super chat, he says, "Did you tell Caitlyn about a possible Hall of Fame induction for the Bella twins? Bet she gave a Homer-like woohoo." Yes, I did tell her. And she's very excited about that, if it is true. I know a lot of people are not too amused by it, but I've said this before, and I'm not saying this just to make Caitlyn happy. The Bellas did play a role in bringing new eyeballs to WWE. Regardless of what you think about them, the Total Divas show was successful. If it wasn't, they wouldn't have done it for 8+ seasons. And then they had their spin-off Total Bellas. If those shows were not bringing in viewers, those shows would not have gone as long as they did. So the Bellas definitely brought in viewers, brought in more female viewers. So again, like with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero bringing in the Hispanic audience, the Bellas, they brought in the female audience. So love them or hate them, they were draws because they did bring in viewers. Love them or hate them. I know a lot of people hate them because they feel like the Bellas only got pushed because they were dating John Cena and Daniel Bryan and all that stuff. But you know what? When they came in, they didn't do much. Their first run sucked. They did nothing. But they came back and they did the show and they both got better in the ring. I know Brie had some botches towards the end of her run, but both of them, they earned their stripes in WWE as far as I'm concerned. And Ken, terminated by Google with a $2 super chat, says, "Sorry, Rift, I thought you were done grading." Not a problem, Ken. Sometimes, because of the delay with the chat room, I get questions after I moved on to a different topic, so I got to backtrack a little bit. I still say that there are other female superstars that should be going in before the Bellas. I mean, that could be a better argument. Like to see AJ Lee go in. I think AJ Lee probably the biggest reason for the women's revolution more than anybody else, but we all know it's politics and yada, yada, yada. Victoria would be another good name that was mentioned. Now, Psycho Jet Black did the off topic here, which I guess I'll answer real quick. Who do I like more, Millhouse or Ralph Wiggum? Probably Ralph Wiggum because he has more one-liners. The doctor told me I wouldn't have so many nosebleeds if I kept my finger out of there, that sort of thing. And the I choose you. Although Millhouse had some good episodes. The Radioactive Man and Fallout Boy. That was a great episode. Millhouse had his fair share of memorable moments, but I got to give the slight edge to Ralph. That Valentine's Day episode, actually, since it is on the eve of Valentine's Day, that is one of my all-time favorite Simpsons episodes, that one with Lisa and Ralph. Christopher Mace with a $2 super chat says, "Have to admit I'm wrong. It was Archer, not Cobb." Oh, well, I didn't even know, so I wasn't able to correct you because I'm not familiar with the Ring of Honor New Japan stuff all that much. So there you go. Correction made via Christopher Mace. And Kayfabe Candy Ass says, "Millhouse gave Bart back his soul. I got to work in the morning." All right, well, take care, Kayfabe Candy Ass. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And thank you to everyone for the super chats and all that stuff. Again, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, live NXT predictions. Chris Cahill with another $2 super chat, the honorary No DQ super chat champion for the evening, says, "What are your thoughts on John Cena returning on SmackDown on the 28th? Definitely looks like a John Cena WrestleMania match. I would be surprised if it wasn't. Who he's going to face, that's all up in the air. I'm wondering if he's going into the Elimination Chamber because that leaked list of the men's participants feels very predictable. And I think if John Cena gets inserted into that match, you would at least add a little bit more unpredictability to it. So maybe John Cena gets added to Elimination Chamber, but I would suspect he's going to be in a match at WrestleMania this year. So we'll talk about that more in the near future. Thank you all for watching. Have a great night, everyone. Take care, and I will see you all tomorrow night for the NXT TakeOver Portland predictions, and then Friday night for SmackDown thoughts. Take care, everyone.